Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the MX Endurance Podcast, where we look at everything that's been happening in the world of endurance sports. My name is Tim Ford, and I'm joined by the sexiest voice in triathlon himself, James Bale. Abbreviated introduction this week, mate. How you going?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Back in the UK, as you can see. So I've got internet that functions, which is good because it was a bit of a struggle last week. You kept freezing, and I could hear you, but I couldn't see you properly. And I get scared when I can't see you, Tim Ford. How are you, mate?
I mean, I'm good. I was going to say the reality is the internet was fine. I was just trying to freak you out by staying completely still like Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy. So in fact, I'm invisible. Just to freak you. I don't know if I sometimes listen to podcasts and they'll intentionally like leave an awkward silence.
Yeah.
Because they want to freak the listeners out thinking that something's wrong with because it's so true. If there's like more than, 2 or 3 seconds of silence on listening to podcasts, I'm like, has something happened? Like, do I have to? And they're like, I got you.
Do you listen to the Andrew Huberman Lab at all? Do you listen to the Andrew Huberman?
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, it's a good podcast. You should check it out. He's a neuroscientist from America, and he talks about all kinds of interesting stuff. But I listened to an interview he did with Sarah Godfrey or something like that on the science of being a woman, and the intricacies of the differences between men and women and stuff. And it was fascinating. It was an amazing podcast, but she did that. But unintentionally, she kept leaving these long pauses, and I kept thinking my podcast had finished or my thing had paused. It was constant. She had a strange cadence in her voice. But check out that podcast.
Was I telling you? I wrote it down while you were talking, actually. But was I talking to you about this? I can't remember. The conversations we have, I can't tell if we have them on the podcast or if we have them off the podcast. But you can get an app now where it literally removes all the dead air from a show. So you only get... So if you take even a slight pause, that would be gone. And it would just be this continuous thread of like... I think that'd be hideous. That would freak me out so much.
We had that conversation off the podcast. But in reality, mate, I don't really exist. I'm just a symptom of your constant and everlasting breakdown as you go through life. You're sitting there talking to a blank screen, to be honest.
I was going to say, people think that the AI chat, what is it, ChatGPT,
it's really
actually
good.
Impressive. It's like, no, we created the James Bell algorithm years ago. But back to your question, mate, I am well. It has been another big week. It's Friday morning podcast time. As I said, it's bright and early. I did an FTP test yesterday, mate, and I'm very, very proud of my FTP test because I put in what I think is probably the best FTP test I've ever done. Because I don't know about you, mate, but normally at this point in my life, I've probably done 25 FTP tests.
Yeah.
And every single one of them has always gone the same way.
Yeah.
I'm going to start conservative.
Boom.
Oh, this feels easy. I guess I'm better than I thought I was.
Every time.
Boom. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. I've made a huge error. Why did I go so hard? You knew better than this every time until you're hanging on for dear life. And yesterday, I mean, I was dreading this FTP test, like big time. I've been... Since making the start of this year, I've been doing a lot of training. My fatigue's been quite high, and I was dreading it. But I was procrastinating, setting up the trainer. Anyway, got to it, and I really thought, "Come on, Tim, don't be an idiot. Like you know better than this. You've learned the hard way. You know how hard those last 5 minutes can get. Just be smart." So I thought, okay, let's see. So I sat on the first couple. I thought, where do I feel like I'm at? I was hitting about 330 to anywhere from 330 to 350 watts. And I thought, fucking, I tell you what, 330 ain't, that's solid. So let's aim for 330 and we'll see what we can do at the back end. So I started at 330 and I reckon those first 7 minutes are probably the fastest 7 minutes of an FTP test I've ever done. It was just like, fucking hell, we're 7 minutes in. And I actually, my heart rate was crazy high and everything, but I don't want to kill myself at this point. Like this is an improvement. And I mean, I was fucking dying at the end of it, like I think you always are at the end of an FTP test. But my average power was 328 for the 20-minute effort. So FTP of like 311, which was a big, that's almost 10 watts. Yeah, 10 watts or 8 or 9 watts higher than it was last time. But I was like, fucking,
is that the highest it's ever been?
Well, I paced it for once.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. So you're now beating my highest ever FTP by 1 watt, mate. You're the 1 watt warrior. Good work.
There you go, mate. And I also love that when I messaged my coach Reese about it, I was like, FTP 311, how good is this? He's like, yeah, it's all right. Let's get it to 330. I'm like, I love this. Let's do it, mate. How good is this?
So, I haven't done an FTP test for some time, and I don't intend to for some time. I will be avoiding that for a
you still own
good
a
while.
bike?
I think I do. Yeah, I still own a few bikes. I've got a shed full of bikes, but I'm a runner now.
I know, ultra runner. Have you worked out where you're going to make your ultra run in 2023 debut? Where are we going to see you on the
I'm not
shit
entirely
in the
sure yet.
forest?
There's a few moving parts at the moment, mate. There's a few moving parts in my world, depending on where I'm going to be and the time I have and the available finances I have as well for where I can get myself and where I want to race. So we'll see. But as soon as that information is available, mate, I will let it know on the podcast so that everybody can come and cheer me on.
Sounds like excuses to me, to be honest. That's all I'm hearing. Is I don't know.
The master
Or is
of
it
the
create
excuse.
anticipation?
Yeah, the master of the excuse, mate.
Well, look, we have got actually plenty of stuff to get stuck into this week. And I think there is no better place to start than the fact that Jan Frodeno, the greatest of all time, has put out his race schedule for this year. I was very excited to see this pop up during the weekend. I don't know what happened, but I think he uploaded a video that cut off a bit because I was watching it. And it said the first race, but there was no mention of Nice in the video. And I was thinking, Christ, is he not racing Nice? Like, what the hell? And then I saw an article that had his race calendar, which had Nice on it. And I've rewatched a video and it had Nice. So I don't know whether it was an error on my end or if he uploaded the wrong video at first or something. But yeah, Jan Frodeno's race schedule is out. We are going to see the greatest of all time lining up this year at 70.3 Oceanside in April, the PTO European Open in May, Ironman Hamburg, whenever that is, the PTO US Open, again, I think that's August, and then Ironman Nice World Championships in September. Jimbo, what do we think about this?
Well, it's a strange feeling, isn't it? Now that he's released his calendar, knowing that this is going to be it. This is there's no encore here. This is going to be the last time we see Jan Frodeno hit the race course in anger as a pro triathlete, and it draws a line, mate, under a very, very illustrious and successful career. So we just got to enjoy the races we got left. Oceanside is his standard kicking off point, isn't it? It's where it's kind of where he goes at the start of every year to go and race it out. The European PTO Open will be an interesting race to be part of. Again, it's kind of just longer than your 70.3, isn't it? But it's nowhere near an Ironman. It's a shame that Hamburg is not Frankfurt anymore. Shorter. Is it shorter? No, the bike is longer, isn't it?
Nope. It's a 100 kilometer distance. So it's what, 280.18 compared to 290.21.
Okay. Well, there you go. Then it's slightly longer than a 70.3 race, but it's as Frodo had said, it's a shame that Hamburg is no longer Frankfurt, but Hamburg will be a good race for him to be part of. And then Milwaukee, and then we're moving on to Nice. It's good that he's racing Nice. There was concern in your mind, wasn't there, that we might not see him at Nice? But it's good that he's going to go there. I want to see a full start list on Nice. I want to see what he's capable of, and I want to see who he can beat and who he can't beat. Because, we're not going to see him in Kona. That seems to be a definitive line in the sand now. So Nice is all we've got in terms of World Championship racing to hang our hats on. So I will be hanging my hat on it, mate.
I'm not as sure about this, though, because looking at it, he said this is my last full year of professional racing is the wording that he's used. So it's not his last year of racing. It's just, so I kind of think we might still see him at Nice. But for me, the big takeaway, and again, imagine Tim Ford jumping to these conclusions when he sees an announcement. We know that we're not going to see the Norwegians, Christian and Gustav, racing in Nice this year. Or it's very unlikely that we'll see them because of how it works with their schedule. But I do believe that they're planning on doing the PTO Tour races. So we could actually get to see Jan racing Christian and Gustav. It is at the shorter distance, which I think we're probably going to give the advantage to the Norwegians. But I think that the biggest surprise for me is looking at Jan as an athlete. We've sort of assumed that in the last couple of years of his career, we're not going to see him lining up at the shorter distance races. We've not seen him go to 70.3 worlds for a while. Probably since 2018, we haven't seen him at 70.3 worlds. So to see so many of these short course races on there, I was like really pleasantly surprised because of the potential of, again, not at an Ironman, not in Kona maybe, but we could actually see him racing against Christian Gustav at these events, and not just Christian Gustav, but the Magnuses, the Sam Laidlows, like all these guys, we could see Jan racing against, and it will be really cool to finally see that happen and see it at that this exciting distance, hopefully with a good broadcast. And yeah, again, it shows the power of these PTO events that they can even convince Jan to come. Not that he wasn't going to, but see him do these shorter races. I think it's exciting.
Do you think that that's a consequence of him coming back from the injury that he's had and not wanting to ramp the running up too quickly as the year gets underway? Do you think he's sort of padding his year out with these shorter races before he hits Nice?
I mean, it would make sense, wouldn't it? Because you're probably not going to see him do too many Ironmans. I'm assuming he's doing Hamburg to ratify his spot because he's a former champion.
Mm-hmm.
He just has to do an Ironman to get the slot. And then, I mean, there was a lot of discussions about whether we were going to see him at Challenge Roth. I think when you factor the fact in that he has to when you consider that he has to ratify, it makes sense that he's not at Roth. As much as I would have loved to see him on that start list, you can see that the progression, and it probably is a safer way to build into form. You can't do too many races. So, yeah,
absolutely. I mean, when you've decided to build one season as your final full season, build it sensibly. He's not in the middle of his career anymore. He hasn't got room to go again because he's drawn a line on this. And I got to say, I disagree with you. I don't think we'll see him in Kona. He's not going to come back and do Kona next year. I don't see it.
Well, there's nothing quite like a 20-minute break mid-podcast just to try to work out the challenges of technology, but hopefully we have fixed it, mate. We are back. We were talking about Jan. You were saying that you don't think he's going to race Kona next year. I would love to get your thoughts on is, what do you think we're going to see if we saw a Jan racing against, say, Christian and Gustav, plus the others, plus the Sams and the Sams and the Magnuses and those guys at that PTO distance, especially with some of the ITU guys who I assume are going to do both? Like, how do you see that race unfolding?
At the PTO distance, it's hard to tell because, I mean, he hasn't done many PTO races. We watched him at the Collins Cup and he did a particularly good job there, didn't he? He really did hammer home the fastest time. So he's still got that in him. My only hesitation would be a man that's coming back from the sort of injury that he's had. How hard does he want to push the races before the really big one, which is the Ironman World Champs in Nice? You don't want anything to go ping just because you're racing as hard as you can over a shorter distance, because he really wants to underline his quality at that Ironman race later in the season.
It's interesting as well because when you consider the last time we saw him really deliver, well, I actually think it's probably his best performance was that 2018 70.3 Worlds. That's where he got that first hip injury that then meant we saw him miss Kona because of that. So we saw him, obviously 2017 he had the problems, and then 2018 he couldn't race because of the injury. Like, yeah, you're right. I feel like for a person who has had the bad luck with injury that Jan has had over the last year, I guess, yeah, is that going to be in the back of his head? And I mean, we also know that the nature of the beast, or the sort of athlete that he is he's not going to go to a race unless he thinks he's in a position to win it. Like, he's not ever there just to make up the numbers. And we also know what he did on that bike in Roth last year. Like, he's clearly still got it. So it's just going to be a case of, I mean, it's the race I'm really keen to see. I would have preferred to see it at an Ironman distance, but the concept of getting those guys together, like, let's just hope that we see like a really stacked, particularly that European race. Like, I really think we're going to see all the big names in that middle distance category race in that race. Yeah, it's exciting. It's a really exciting prospect.
It is exciting, and it's good to see the year penned out, fleshed out in front of us, isn't it? So now we know where we're going to be looking. We know where we've got to pay attention, and you just got to enjoy it. When an athlete of this quality has decided to sign off, then enjoy what you got left, and all success to him, really.
Do we think we're going to see Lionel line up in Oceanside to try to have get a bit of revenge for the last time I think we saw those two race each other in Oceanside? Do you think? Again, let's be honest. Like, Lionel is very much an athlete motivated by his competitors. Do you think we might see? Is this gonna wet Lionel's lips and think, okay, well, again, Lionel is a very, very good middle distance athlete. Do you think we could see Lionel go, you know what, I'm going to do those two races. I'm going to have a crack at Jan. Let's see if I can actually pip him.
It wouldn't surprise me, because you say Lionel's motivated by his competitors. I would take that further and say that he's very motivated by Jan Frodeno, isn't he? He's got that motivation in him. That he sees him as his sort of his one true combatant, and I wouldn't surprise me if he picked some of these races to go and have a final crack at the champ.
I often wonder whether Jan sits awake at night going like, why did Lionel forget me for the Norwegians? Like he used to be obsessed with me and now he seems obsessed with them. But no,
No.
I also think I'd love to see, that's a race I'd love to see too, because as I said, I think Lionel is exceptional at that middle distance. So same with Sam Long. I'd love to throw Sam Long's name in there. Yeah, it's going to be exciting. On the topic of Germans doing shorter races, that's a weird segue. This weekend we have Challenge Wanaka happening in New Zealand, and the reason I wanted to bring this up is because it is the start of Sebastian Kienle's big retirement tour. He's down in New Zealand racing Challenge Wanaka. What do you know about Wanaka, mate?
Not a huge amount. I know that it's been a race that's on my list of races I would like to do at some point in my life for some time. So I'd like to go. I have been to Wanaka when I lived in New Zealand for a year earlier in my life, but I have never raced there. But it's a wonderfully beautiful race. I know that he's certainly picking the races, isn't he, for his final farewell year. He's got an email. If he's listening, or anyone associated to Sebastian Kienle is listening, there's an email in your inbox from me, mate. Come and have a chat with us about Norseman on the podcast. We'd love to have a word with you.
Exactly. I still think that the way he's doing this is so cool, where he's just picking a whole bunch of bucket list races. Like this is the stuff that gets me excited. And again, Challenge Wanaka is a race that it's on every year, but it's not one that we really follow that closely. But it shows the power of the big name athlete, where we're talking about it now because of Sebastian Kienle, and I think that's, like I said, it shows. In fact, I think I put this up the other day. We were talking about last week about the Roth thing. It's like it really does show the power of like appearance fees. Hey, if you can really get those big names. So in fact, it reminds me, and I don't know if you saw that I put this on Twitter. So I'm actually going to get the tweet up. This is, again, we talk about just going off on a tangent. So Jürgen Zach is one of the greats of triathlon. And he put up this post on his Facebook page this week, and I saw it, and I thought, Christ Almighty, this is interesting. I'm stalling while I'm trying to find it. Where is it? But he basically said that we've seen this happen in the past, where Kona has basically been threatened by another race, and he said, interesting facts about Ironman versus Triathlon Denise in the early days. 1985, still no prize money at Ironman Hawaii for the pros. All the big names decided to go to Nice instead, which lured them in with appearance money and a good prize purse. Only one top pro undermined this and ended up winning unchallenged with a course record, Scott Tinley. In 1986, Hawaii came up with prize money and the pros returned. Some athletes got appearance fees. They were not allowed to race in Nice due to the contract.
I saw that tweet.
Do you think that we are going to start to see...
I saw that tweet. I thought it was really interesting. Do you think this is going to... Your question is going to be, do I think this is going to prompt a response out of Kona in order to, sort of become the big dog in the park again? I don't think so. I think those days are past, mate. I think it's a very different ecosystem that now runs the sport, especially at the top of Ironman. And in terms of that Hawaii race, I don't think they're motivated by the factors that they would have motivated the people that ran the sport back in 1985. I think it's a different world. 1985, the year of Rocky IV.
It's one of those things where we can sit and we can theorize, and I mean, all we can do is base it on the evidence and the discussions and the things we see. And I think you're 100% correct that Ironman as a brand is a very different company to it was in the 80s. I often wonder, because I know this is an argument that we've seen made by a number of other pros. I think Joe's been quite vocal about it, for example. I guess it would be interesting to see, like, if there was a year where the pros, again, all united, and you'd have to get them all, because otherwise you'd end up with this where you'd have like James Bell going through to win the Ironman world title. I do wonder what it would mean, because as much as the history of Kona is what we hear about, is it about the history of the course, or is it about the races that have happened on that course? And I would be curious to see what it would do to the reputation of Ironman if they did say, like, it could go either way, wouldn't it? Where there's no impact on signups, you still have the same number of age group as racing, and they're like, actually, perfect. We just saved ourselves, however much in prize money and etc. And we in fact have another 60 slots on the pier that we can now fill with more age group bikes? Or would it actually start to damage the reputation of the race a little bit and actually start to make it a bit more of just another mass participation Ironman held on this island? Because again, when we talk about the history of Kona, we're not talking about the history of age group racing, are we? We're talking about those historic races that were pro races. Like nobody talks about the battle between John Jefferson and like Larry Johnson in 1993's age group 50 to 55 battle. Like we never hear the stories of the age group battles.
It was Jeffrey Jefferson.
So
I think
I don't know. Oh, your mate. But like, it does seem. I think. Yeah, I don't know. I would be curious. I would be very curious to see if the pros all did.
It's a difficult question to answer from us too, isn't it? Because neither of us are driven or drawn by the idea of racing on Kona. The long distance races don't particularly interest you, and you're not particularly drawn to Kona. Same for me. I mean, I've done long distance triathlon, I've done Ironman, but I'm not drawn to Kona at all. So it's difficult for me and you to answer the question as to, from a consumer perspective, would our enjoyment of that Kona World Championship race be dented by not the pros not racing there? I don't know. Particularly for me, probably not. But like you say, it'll come down to numbers on a spreadsheet for a company like Ironman. If they found themselves in a position where no pros decided to rock up to Kona one year and it did their balance sheet good, they'd go, oh well, this is what we do now. We'll do this. No more pros. We've saved all that organisation, all that effort. But if it did their balance sheet bad, they'd probably go, well, we better carry on with this.
I mean, I always feel like when you look at let's just call them situations. We're using the Ironman example at the moment because there's been a lot of talk about this lately. But things seem to go in cycles, and it's like that Greek tragedy cycle. The build up, and then you have the hubris where you think this hubris comes in where you think you're untouchable and you're too good, which always immediately precedes the downfall. The person who gets up to the point where they think they're too good, they can't be touched, and something happens and they lose everything, and they have to sort of start to rebuild. And again, it's probably not applicable in this case, but I kind of wonder: are we seeing hubris from Ironman? Like, are we seeing them thinking that they are now too big? They are the sport. They are too big. They don't need there's this cycle that often happens where as soon as somebody starts to go too far one way, it does tend to come back and bite them in the ass.
Yeah, agreed. But I mean, my response to that would always be, if you don't care about the pros, don't do it anymore and let someone else do it well. Don't half-ass it.
Yeah.
Don't half fucking do it. Do it or don't do it. That's this whole clinging onto it for the sake of whatever it. I don't know. Just fucking do it better. Do better.
So one of the responses to my tweet came from Renee Keeley, who we're going to be talking about later because she was one of the people who's been involved with changing the PTO ranking system. But Renee said, if PTO put up a huge prize purse for a full distance, proper full distance, and got the top 40 in the world there, it would be their most successful and most viewed race. I would bet my bike on it. And I actually think she's right. Hey, like I feel like we look at these, a lot of the discussion around the broadcast and making this racing a viable product is about trying to get it to work for television. And as much as it doesn't make sense because nobody wants to watch a full Ironman, I still think Kona is probably the watched race, and it's partly because it's Kona, but also because of the field. And I would really, I guess what I'm getting at with this whole thing is I'd love to see the PTO at least try. Like I feel like we've seen another year. Their race calendars come out where it's very much still about that. I mean, they call it the PTO distance. I want them to actually start, like, let's have a go and let's see what happens. Again, there's the risk that this could backfire massively, but sometimes you've got to risk a lot to try to gain a lot. And you're right. If Ironman decides, you know what, this isn't for us, the PTO are doing a better job of it, let them do it. And the PTO do it and it works, fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just... Something
all I want to see is good pro racing.
Change.
I don't care whose name's on it. I don't care whose name's on the banner. I just want to see good quality pro racing where the pros get paid what they deserve for being some of the fittest and most talented athletes on the planet.
Okay, okay, that's another thing then. You've just talked about what the pros deserve. How do you measure their worth? Like, how would you? Because I feel like, again, one of the the potential positives of what the PTO is doing is that it's athlete owned, which means that they're going to get a share of the value, as opposed to, I think if we go, again, I'm probably going to get hate for this, but I feel like the PTO's model at the moment, like, let's just pay these guys a lot of money, isn't probably the right approach, because I don't feel like they're probably getting a decent ROI on that investment at the moment. How do you determine the worth of these athletes?
That's an interesting question, because obviously we haven't got sort of ticket sales or anything like that. You're not it's not a stadium sport where you're generating ticket sales, where it's that easy to measure the worth of, no, this player on the field who brings this much value to the club or the team or whatever. But and also what I'm about to say is that they are the representatives of the sport on a professional level, so therefore they drive participation at the age group level. But again, the argument can be made on that. Do they really? Because a lot of triathletes dip into the sport, do their triathlon, and don't particularly know anything about the pro side of the sport. So, there's arguments to or from, for or against that.
I'd be very curious to see the retention numbers, because I think we can probably agree that the impact on people signing up to Ironman race in particular is not probably that influenced by pros to start with, and there's definitely some. Like, I think that there are some people out there who have seen, again, we always talk about the 89 Iron War or something that's inspired them to want to do it. But I would be curious to know what impact it has on retention, or the factor, or the impact that has on people coming back to do them again and again and again. Because I can only talk about my own experience with the sport, and I know that when I first signed up for a 70.3, I couldn't name a single professional triathlete. You could have lined up the best in the world, and I wouldn't have no idea who any of them are. And it didn't influence my decision to race 70.3. But I tell you what, mate, it started to. Like, after a couple, I really started to pay attention to the pros, and then I wanted to go. I would get excited about them. If I heard an athlete was doing a race nearby, or a race that I wanted to do, and then I heard they were doing it, man, you really would get me there. And again, I just feel like I think the issue is what you sort of say here, where there's a very obvious lack of transparency with this stuff, where nobody really knows. Nobody has really measured these things, and because you're right, the product is race entries. It's not the broadcast. It's not ticket sales. It's not those things.
But it's also
yeah,
you're quite right in terms of hard to measure it, and it's all about retention, really. Once people get into the sport and decide to stay, that's when the pros come into their own. It's when you go and buy your second or third bike that you start to think, oh, what's this pro riding? What's that pro riding? So yes, it's participation and entries to the sport, but it sings in terms of the bike industry and the running shoe industry and those sort of. But all that money goes not outside the sport, because it's in the same ecosystem. It doesn't go into the pockets of an organization that can pay the athletes, unless those athletes are sponsored by those companies within that ecosystem. But even then, I would argue that in terms of return, when it comes to bike companies, bike sales, and running shoe companies selling running shoes, the athletes don't get paid nearly enough in terms of what they do to bring people and bring customers into those industries.
I will 100% agree with you on that. I don't feel like that is a function of. I don't think that is a function of the brands necessarily proactively doing that. I sort of touched on this last week. I feel like that's the athlete's fault. Like, I feel like there's a real problem at the moment of these athletes are constantly devaluing themselves to the point where they have single-handedly driven their own value down. Like, that's the biggest problem with those sort of things. But well, here we go.
I would say yes, I agree with that in terms of the very professional athletes, indeed. But I think that's also a symptom of the times we live in now, where it's a blurred line between age groupers up through influencers online, and then where's the line between that and the pro athlete? Because that's helped drive it down, because age groupers will just post, or age groupers that have got a big following will post posts for free shoes. They won't get paid. Influencers, influencers will get paid a little bit, and then pro athletes will, where the brands look at the value of the return. If I can get an influencer who's got so many followers to do it for this much? Why would I get a pro athlete who's probably got maybe a little bit more or even a little bit less in some instances? Why would they do it for this much? It's that is the problem.
Yeah.
It's a symptom of these times, mate.
I think it was when we were talking with somebody at Argon. Was it Argon maybe a year or two ago, where they were saying that you've got to look at the pros as like the F1, where they are the, you know, you give everybody equal footing, and you see, we assume that all the pro athletes are pretty close to each other. Like, the differences between the top 20, we're talking very, very small percentages, right? So then it actually gives the opportunity for the product to actually speak. Like, again, maybe I'm being select, but I think if you look at the performances of Trek lately, their new speed concept bike, you can see that bike is fucking fast because it had Taylor Nib on it at 7.3. It had Sam Laidlow in Kona. Like, we're seeing, I think there's that element of it, because again, the influencer thing is true, but it also, like, at some point the performance has to come in. So again, you can have the pretty guy or girl who's posting with the fancy shoes as much as you like, but I guess, and that's probably going to appeal to the masses, I guess, the people who don't really know that much. But at some point, if those people are crap athletes, there's damage to that too, right? Like, if you become, I feel like there is this balance. Yeah, have those people, but I think you need to supplement that with the performance element. Like,
You're talking
as
from a common
consumers,
sense point of view, and it makes sense. You're talking from a common sense point of view, but
true.
that's not how some of these brands look at it. They look at it as it is as activation and how many people are seeing their product. They're not thinking, actually, the pro athletes come across as pro athletes, and that shows true performance. They're thinking, how many eyes can we get our brand in front of?
Well, again, then let's use it. Let's use a specific example right now, and I'd love to discuss on running shoes. This time last year, I would have thought, I actually used to look at athletes who were wearing On running shoes, who were sponsored by On, and thinking they are taking the money. This is purely a money-based decision. On running shoes are not good. You couldn't, if they gave me free running shoes, I would say, no, thank you. No, thank you, sir. I do not want the On running shoes. I'm not interested in wearing On running shoes. I think they're bad. And I think that's, again, we know some athletes who we worked with or work with who were just like, I'm not interested, like, On is non-negotiable, not interested in talking with them. To the point so that when Gustav signed with On pre-Kona, I literally had a conversation with his brother where I was like, come on, mate, he's taking the money. He's like, dude, who are you talking? You're talking about Gustav. Like, nothing they do is just for the money. Everything's about performance. And I was like, okay, mate, like, yeah, whatever you reckon. And then we saw that performance. Now, I reckon that Gustav's performance in Kona with those shoes and the talk and the buzz that generated will have done so much more for On than having, I don't know, Johnny Smith influencer walking around on running shoes. Or do you think maybe not? Do you think that
No, I completely agree with you on that point. In terms of these leaps that are made by brands and getting visibility on them, showing the true performance. But that is quite an isolated incident. It's kind of like when the Nike Alpha Flies came out or the Asics Meta Speed came out. When you've got these big advances that are taken with the big changes and the adaptations, then it's good to have them on a pro pair of feet or a pro pair of legs, because you'll show the really true the true difference between the haves and the have-nots in terms of those that are wearing and those that aren't. But when it comes to day-to-day getting your brand out there in terms of brand awareness, they're looking at it from the perspective of how many eyes they can get them in front of. It's a shame, but there's more to come. Changes will happen. These things work in cycles.
it's, even when you're talking that, I was thinking though, because if those three examples, so we've got On, we've got Asics, and we've got Nike. I actually think that I would associate, for me at least, and again, maybe I'm probably not the true measure, but there was a specific performance attached to each one of those shoes that has made me pay attention to them. Nike was the sub 2 hour. Asics was Beth Potter's 5K world record.
Yeah.
And probably Christian's run it sub a little bit. And then On was Gustav. So, like, again, I hadn't even thought of that until you just said that. Again, I'm just sort of thinking out loud. But yeah, I don't even know where we're going with this anymore. We have just gone off on a complete tangent. I do want to go back, though, to...
I don't know what we started on. What were we talking about before we went down this rabbit hole?
I was doing the Jürgen Zach tweet. We're talking about Keenley Racing Monaco. But back to the Ironman thing, because you were talking about, the impact that pros have on retention. And I was thinking, do you think Ironman does enough or cares enough about retention? Or is their model purely gone to, we just want If anybody ever wants to do an Ironman, even if we get one race entry out of them, we'll maximize the revenue we can get out of them at that one time, and then they're done. Or like, do you think there is? Let's not even talk about pros on that, but do you think there's room for improvement for retention in the sport? Because I think that is something that is, and this isn't just an Ironman problem. This is a triathlon problem, that there's not enough done. There's not enough focus put on making sustainable retention in the sport. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I think you're right. I think there probably isn't. I think Ironman's model works on, almost one in, one out. Get in, do it, move on. And that is almost, you can see that through the entire essence of the sport, the essence of the broadcast when you're watching it happen. It's all about these sort of inspiring, motivational, he got it done, she got it done stories. And yeah, I think you're right. There should be more focus put on retaining people in the sport.
You're talking about the inspirational stories. So obviously Ironman every year do their highlights package. They show the race live on the stream, but then they have their, the NBC broadcast that they put up. And last year after the Kona, because again, I was in Kona last year. I didn't really actually, you get to see the race a bit, but it's a lot more what's in front of you. So I was quite excited about watching the highlights packet, the broadcast this year. And I turned that fucking thing off, mate. Like I got so frustrated by the Americanness of it. I don't want to say that, but it's like here we have this inspirational athlete, like this whole thing. I'm like, mate, what the do people actually like this? Like, does this work?
It's so boring, isn't it?
It was so wanky.
Yeah.
It was worse. I would rather hear Didi 56,000 times during a race than watch that 1 hour or whatever that was. It was literally, I think if you look at it's like 6 minutes in and I've just given up. And I've gone back a few times to try to watch it because I'm just going to have to mute it or something because it is, but it's not just, it's also the focus on all the stories and all that. So, mate, you can do the one that's like for the whatever, but then can we have like an actual pro highlights package? That would be good for me.
I want to,
but again,
I want to make you an alarm for the morning on your phone, which is just that guy saying Didi, Didi, Didi over and over again. I want you to wake up to it every day.
I think it's that point in life where if you like will things into existence, because it's so funny now how often I spot the word Didi around, just like, like I was sitting, again, this is genuinely true. I was sitting in the same cafe I've gone to for years at this point, my local cafe called Homage. If you're in Sydney, I highly recommend Homage, especially they're the best coffee in the world. And I was sitting there and I looked up at a sign I've probably looked 100 times and it says Didi on it. And I was like, I can't fucking escape Didi. Like this is actually, it's like I'm going to start like, there's that movie, was it 28? Is it 28? Which has got Jim Carrey where he sees the number 28 everywhere.
Yeah.
That's me with Didi now. It's just like I spot it everywhere. Didi.
Escape from Didi.
We have gone off on a completely massive tangent. Let us try to get it back. Sebastian Kienle, race in Wanaka. It's fantastic. I believe he's staying in New Zealand and doing Ironman New Zealand in a few weeks, which I'm also really looking forward to. I love that Sebastian's doing this farewell to it. You said, do you know anybody in contact with him? I know Sebastian's agent very, very well. So I will contact Ronnie and see if we can get Sebi on the podcast for you.
Good stuff, because there's an email in his inbox. I think I emailed Ronnie as well, but, I'm not as big a swinger as you, mate.
Exactly, mate. I mean, people know me. I'm a big deal.
You're a big deal.
It's such a bullshit thing to say. The next thing is the announcement. It's all about big name triathletes racing this week, because the next thing is that Alistair Brownlee has come out and announced his first race of the year is going to be Ironman South Africa. Now, we saw Ali have possibly the most up and down year last year, where he was getting ready for sub. He gets injured. We saw him at Oceanside where he kind of sucked. We saw him then come back and do that incredible Swansea race. And we saw him have that incredible Kalmar race and then get injured and miss Kona. He missed St. George, Kona, and Sub 7 last year, but still managed to have some of the better performances of the year. Do you think we are finally going to see an Alistair Brownlee have the year that he deserves? Or if this thing goes to shit, do you think he's done?
No, I don't think he's done. I think we may well see him have the year that he deserves and he's needed for a while. I actually read an interview with Chris McCormack, of all people, on Try 24/7, where he was talking about Brownlee.
I know him.
You know him. You're talking about Brownlee and the underestimation possibly of where he's at. No, I think that interview is worth going to have a read of. Go to the Try 24/7 website and have a chat, have a read of that, because he got some good insight. Man knows his stuff. No, I don't. I think he could well have the year that we finally want to see him have. Um, I'm pleased to see that he's starting his campaign on the 5th of March in the Ironman African Championships alongside Laura Phillip, who's also starting her season there at that race. And what I'd like to see from Alistair Brownlee, really and truly, is a year of no injury and no illness. Just go and have his races, let the cards fall where they may, but don't get injured and don't be ill. Just let any issues that he has be performance based, and let's see where he's at.
You spoke about the Macca article. Again, I've seen it. I think it must have got posted overnight because I woke up and saw it, and I like skimmed it, but I'm definitely going to read it. And I feel like it was a bit of this, like, people forget how good Alistair Brownlee is, and which I think is absolutely true. He revolutionized short course racing. Do you think we're at a point now in long distance racing where Alistair Brownlee isn't considered the powerhouse that he was at short course? And do you think that could actually be, again, do you think that's a good thing for him, or do you think that's going to piss him off and motivate him? Like, how do you see this change of perception of Alistair Brownlee affecting Alistair Brownlee?
I don't see it pissing him off. I see, as an athlete with the brain that he's got, with the racing brain that he's got, I see someone like him seeing that as an opportunity to fly under the radar a little bit more than he normally would. Do you know what I mean? If he's an intelligent racer, we all know that, and he's an intelligent athlete. He's an intelligent competitor. So if I was suddenly not on the back foot, but if I had people going, well, he might not be worth looking at on this race. He's just there. Then that in his brain, I would say is oh, yeah, all right, let's see what we can do, but don't make too much noise about it. Don't let it anger you. Just go out there and perform. And I think it might take the pressure off a little bit if he's got any pressure.
I love the thought of, because we all know that, like, triathlon has a short memory. And I love the thought that there's some people that have come into the sport in the last couple of years and they've become very passionate about professional racing. They've not really seen Alistair Brownlee do what we know Alistair Brownlee does. And Alistair Brownlee this year just suddenly comes and does everything we know he's capable, wins this, goes on, wins everything this year, and like is back to his best. And there's these people who are like, who the fuck is this Alistair Brownlee guy? Like, what happened here? Like,
no COVID, no Achilles
me
injuries,
so
no
much.
calf injuries. Just to be there on the race course, sowing it as he knows he can. That's what I'd like to see. I don't want to see him pulling out of races because he got ill, or having to pull up by the side of the racetrack because his calf's gone. It's just not an accurate indication as to where he's at and what he's capable of. I want to see even if he doesn't win, I just want to see him perform at his best, whatever that is.
Yeah, no, again, I love it. I've just realized we are so male triathlon heavy this week. We need to, but the next thing that I wanted to touch on, this is probably, again, one of the worst kept secrets in triathlon, but Sam Long came out this week and announced his new coach, that he's now working with Dan Plews. We know Dan obviously coached Terenzo Bozzoni, coaches Javier Gomez, he coaches Chelsea Sodaro. I think he has the Kona course record for age groupers. One of, I think, the best coaches in the world. What do you think about this, mate? Sam Long, not taking us, I don't think there's anything wrong with his other coach, but making a significant change in his coaching. And do you think this is going to see the next version or the better version of Sam Long? What do you think?
I mean, he's still quite young. He's still got a long way to go. He's got a lot to improve on in his swim before he can really be up there, having the most complete races that he's probably capable of. If he feels he needs a coaching change, then he'll be doing that for his own reasons. And hopefully they'll focus on that weakness, really bring him up to level, because, he's a very proficient competitor, even with that weaker swim. So if he can do something about that, then he'll be right up there in all the races. He's an interesting character. He's been on an interesting journey. He didn't have the year he wanted last year. It just didn't fall into place for him. And I'd like to see him back at the front of the races, really going shoulder to shoulder with some of the very best.
Yeah, no, I think this is an exciting combination to me. I feel like you're right. Sam Long has so much untapped potential, and like Dan Plews is very, very good at what he does. And again, almost like with anything, you really hope that we see Sam have that full buy-in and the long-term, I guess, commitment to the process, because we know that Dan's very much about the low-carb, high-fat approach, which is, I'm assuming, not something that Sam has probably done in the past. I mean, I don't know, to be honest. I don't have any insight over that. But yeah, again, I really get excited by the thought of good athletes, like good, talented athletes, not that they're not all talented, but working with, good coaches. And you often see that when an athlete makes that change in coaching, there is an initial boost in performance because of the change of stimulus and things like that. But yeah, you're right. I think at the end of last year, Sam definitely didn't have the year that he probably wanted. You look at the momentum he had from going from a relatively unknown athlete to this loudmouth athlete that didn't really back up his words to suddenly, really backing up his words. Coming, was he second or third in St. George? Second in St. George? Yeah, second in St. George in 2021 at the 70.3 Worlds and stuff. So yeah, again, an exciting change. And again, I just think I think Dan Plews is very, very good at what he does, and he's got that, I guess, aura or allure or je ne sais quoi, whatever you want to call it, around him, where him working with an athlete makes me more interested in that athlete, which I think is, then there's a handful of coaches that I would say that about. And Dan's probably, definitely one of the pioneers or the main ones in that regard.
Yeah, agreed. There's plenty more to come from Sam, and hopefully this is a good move for him, and we'll see how he goes, eh?
Exactly. Now, mate, we are going to be going back to something we used to do all the time, but we haven't done for quite a while. We're going to have a little bit of a chat around something specifically PTO related. And don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to do the thing you used to, because I quite frankly can't be bothered trying to edit in the little soundbite and stuff. But this week, we saw the PTO announce a change to their ranking system. Now, we'd known this was coming out for quite a while. I think we got sent the information maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago that was embargoed until this week. It was Valentine's Day was the day they announced it. But we're going to run through it now. I have gotten, because again, we've tried to remove the read-in that we always used to do on the podcast and just have more conversations. But I feel like there's enough specific information in the change to the system that I actually want to have something to refer to. So I have gotten an article written by a friend of the podcast, Tim Hemming. He did this for Triathlete magazine, and I'm going to go through it with you a bit, mate. And then I thought, after I've read a bit, we can have a bit of a discussion. How does that sound, James Bale?
I'll just sit the fuck back, shall I, and let you crack on.
I mean, the article is great. Again, I'd recommend you all go and have a look at it. It starts with what were the original rankings. I'm not going to go through that. I think we've discussed ad nauseum what the original rankings were. But this is what was the problem? And then he says the problems were multiple, but an overriding issue is one of transparency. Triathletes and fans just didn't know, and it wasn't or couldn't be properly explained how the algorithm worked. Understandably, this led to conspiracies about how the numbers were actually crunched, and much ear if you scored less than you thought you deserved. Additionally, a triathlete would only find out how many points they'd scored several days after the race finished, and given the system was 100% time-based, it put the onus on triathletes to thrash themselves to reach the finish line in every race, even if they were winning by minutes. In its defense, the PTO has always said that the system was a solution for a pandemic where its members might not have had the opportunity to travel freely, and in theory at least, have equal chances to score points in more local races. So where are we at now? We had a group of athletes. I think it was Jackson Laundry, Ruth Astle, Renee Keeley, Anthony Costes, and there's one other who I'm blanking on right now. Let me see if I can find their name.
Danielle Lewis.
Danielle Lewis. Yep. So that was the group of athletes who basically gave this discussion, and what they said is, or what they got is a set of points based on what is it? The results is the new ranking system will still be an average point score across an athlete's 3 best races, but each score is now determined by a mixture of race position, which is 40% of the score for that race, strength of field, which is 30% of the score for that race, and finishing time is also 30% for their score for that race. Each race will also be put into one of 5 tiers now: diamond, platinum, gold, silver, and bronze. Diamond tier events are the Ironman World Championships and all of the PTO races, including the Collins Cup. So here's a little bit more of a breakdown if I can find it. So how does it work? The point allocation, as I said, is split across 3. So race position. A race tier sets its base points and the percentage drop-offs between finishing positions. Tiers are based on factors including race prize money, broadcast coverage, and commitment to supporting pro fields. For example, a top diamond tier event is the Ironman World Championships with 100 points for the winner and a drop-off of 2% for each subsequent position. The second, platinum tier events are challenge Roth with 95 points for the win and a drop off of 2%. A third tier, gold tier event is Clash Daytona with 90 points for the winner and a 5% drop off in points for the position. This is similar to how World Triathlon ranks its World Championship Series. So the races fit into the different points. So the diamond has less than or greater than or equal to $500,000 in prize money, base points of 100. Sorry, I'm just twitching my phone to see if I can get more details. Where did it go? And a drop off of 2%. So platinum is between $350,000 and $500,000 total prize purse. It includes Ironman 70.3 World Championships, Challenge Roth World Triathlon Long Distance World Championships, 95% points, 2% drop off. Gold between $75,000 to $350,000, or 150 to 350. So that's for middle distance, or 150 to 350 full distance. So most Ironmans and 70.3 regional championships. Challenge Family Championship Clash Daytona. That's 90% base points, 5% drop off. Silver between 25 to 75,000 for middle distance, 50 to 150 for full distance. That's most Challenge Family events, many 70.3s and Ironman races, Clash Miami, some independent races. It's 80 points and a drop off of 8% per place. And then bronze, 10 to 25,000 for middle distance, 10 to 50,000 full distance. Some Challenge Family events, smaller independent races, 70 points maximum, 11% drop off. So that's a lot. That's quite complicated. And I think looking at that point, at least, James, you can see that they're really trying to say, race the bigger races, you're going to get better points. The next one, do you want to talk about that a little bit before we move on to the next part? So I'm not just reading the whole time.
Yeah, no, I mean it makes sense. And what I'm particularly keen on with this new system is that they've got rid of the algorithm. You know, it might be complicated, but at least you can read it and you can understand it, and you know why decisions are being made and why points are being awarded. You know, I want to see that transparency as opposed to just believe the algorithm, rely on the algorithm. It's fine. It all makes sense. This allows those people that really want to dig into it to actually have a read through and dig into it. So I'm up for that. And I'm also up for this diamond, platinum, gold, silver, bronze thing, pushing the athletes towards the bigger races, the ones that are going to get them more points. And ideally starting to see the sport stack fields. That's what we want.
Yeah. And I mean, I like the fact that, again, I'll try to break this down based on my understanding, but if 40% of your points for the race are based on this, if you're doing a 100-point race, so a PTO race, Collins Cup, Ironman World Championships, you know that the maximum you can earn is 40 points towards your total score, right? Because it's 40%, 100 is the thing. So straight away, it's 40 points. And then you know that if every position you come less, it's 2 points less. So work out the percentage. But it also means that if you go into a race that is a bronze race, for example, you know what's 70% of 40. The most you can ever get is 70% of 40. And then you know also that it's 11-point drop every place you come down. So you straight away know you can't do one of these bronze tier races and expect to earn 100 points. Like, it's going to become extremely difficult to reach that threshold suddenly. So I think that is very good for clarity. Like, you know, going in this part, this is the maximum. It reminds me of school, James, when, I don't know about you, but I used to get to my end of year exams and I would work out exactly what I needed to do to get the pass based on my other rate. Like, so okay, well, I've got an 80, an 84, a 79. The last mark is 50%. I only need to get 63% and I've passed the subject. It kind of reminds me a little bit of that.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I mean, ultimately what we've been looking at for the last however many years of the PTO and their ranking system is a not being able to figure out before a race how much it was going to count or how many points you could get, because they factored in the conditions on the day algorithm, and it blew my mind that sometimes you'd have somebody win one race and get less points for someone else coming second at a different race. But that wasn't clear before the races happened. At least with this, as an athlete, you're making your decision based on where you know the race sits in this ranking system. Okay, I'm going to go and race a bronze race, and I know I can't get this many points. It doesn't matter about my finishing time related to the perfect finishing time on the race. It's just I'm limited to this based on where the race sits in the ranking system, and I like that. I like clarity, mate. I like clarity. I do.
The next of the three is 30% of the athlete score is strength of field. As the name suggests, the strength of field criteria is designed to reward athletes who put in stronger performances against tougher competition. A race's strength of field score is calculated on the average PTO rankings points of the top 5 athletes who start the race. So that again means that if you have a number of very high ranked athletes, say the average PTO ranking point. So say you've got, the top 5 are all got an average of over 90 points. You know then that that's going to basically mean that you've got a good chance of getting a big boost. It's not going to be the full, unless we have athletes who all have 100, you're probably not going to get the 30% every time. So it might be, 27%, 27 points might be the highest you can get if the top 5 are all ranked or got a percentage of 90. Again, clear. The only thing I'll add with this is it means they're going to have to work out how rapidly their rankings update, because I know sometimes it's not a couple of days after race, it might be a week and a half. Because if you have athletes, it's not unlikely, but it's not always that. But if you have athletes racing, more than 2 weeks in apart, their ranking or point average could alter drastically based on a previous performance. So they're going to have to work out a way to keep that up to date. But what do you think about that next component?
Yeah, I like it. Like you say, it has to turn over quickly. It's got to be something that's done automatically. It's got to be a system in place. But I do like the fact that it's fairly easy when you've got a ranking system to determine how strong the current form guide thinks the people you're racing are. So it should be a fairly easy thing to do. There should be a mathematical equation that assesses where in the rankings do the people you're racing sit, and therefore how much of this 30% points do you get for beating those people.
Okay, and the other thing I was curious about was the other. We know that there's the function of professional racing is you can basically sign up to races and the last minute. I was curious to see if it was based on the start list or if actually who started the race, and it says who starts the race. So that's clear, because otherwise I was going to say you just get you'd be going, hey Jan, hey Gustav, hey Christian, can you just enter this race to boost up the strength of field score? But no, you have to actually start the race. So that's, again, it'll be interesting to see, because let's say for example you're an athlete who you've picked a race because of the strength of score field is a particular thing that you're like, fuck, okay, all the best to race, and let's say everybody comes down with food poisoning, and suddenly the top 10 people pull out. That's going to drastically then impact that score, isn't it? So there's, again, I'm not trying to pick holes in it. I just think it's interesting. It's interesting to see. I think it's a good step, and I think what you're probably going to see is that the strength of field score and those tiered races are probably going to be pretty similar, because you're going to see the higher Ironman World Championships is going to always have the highest strength of field score, for example. So I think you're going to naturally see those two be pretty much in alignment. Now, this next one is the race time score, and it says this is where it gets complicated. So I can't wait to go through this. Accounting for 30% of an athlete's score, 2 baselines are set: the baseline score and the baseline time. The baseline score is the average of tier base points and strength of field score. The baseline time is the average finishing time of the top 5 athletes or less, depending on the number of athletes in the race. An athlete's final race time score is calculated by starting with the baseline score and adding or deducting 6 points for every 1% that they're faster or slower than the base time score. For example, the baseline score is 95.5, average of 100 tier base points and a strength of field of 91. The baseline time is 3:58.17, based on an average top 5 finishes 3:44.40, 3:55.33, 3:59.22, 4:04.41, 4:09.09. Race time score for first place is 131.86, faster than the baseline time by 6.06 times 6 points equals 36.36 points. 95.5 plus 36.36 equals 131.86. Jesus Christ, this is hurting my brain. Second place, 107.6, faster than the baseline time by 2.03 times 6 points equals 12.16, plus 95.5 equals 107.66. And then third place, 92.8, slower than the baseline time by 0.45 times 6 points equals minus 2.7 points. 95.5 minus 2.7 equals 92.8. So I guess in that sense, it kind of makes sense. It's another benchmark. The overall race score is calculated as 40% of an athlete's race position, 30% of their strength of field, and 30% of an athlete's race time score. Was that clear to you, mate?
I'm not sure I understood much of that, mate. If I'm honest, I need to give that a read through on my own, and because I was just listening to you reel off numbers, and it was like pickling.
So let me try to break this down a bit better. I think that they're saying that the average. So basically, you start with the base tier points. So in this situation, it's 95.5. So that is the starting point. That is the I guess you'd call it formally the AIT. The AIT is now based on this tier based points thing. So if it's 95.5, you then earn, what did I say? 6 points. What did I say? You get 6 points for every 1% that you're faster or slower than the baseline time. So if that baseline time is 3:58.17 and the baseline score attached to that is 95.5, you then earn or lose points based on your percentage from that time. So let's keep it even simpler, and let's just say that the baseline score is 100. Then for every 1% you're up or down from that, you earn or lose 6 points from 100.
Yeah,
I kind of get it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, cool. It's not very interesting, but yeah, it makes sense. And again, I like that there is clarity, and if you've got the inclination to go and read through it and understand it, the information is there. There's the PTO press release, which you could go on their website and read through, which is a much less detailed version of the article you're reading. There's the article you're reading, which I assume is on the 220 Triathlon website from Tim Hemme, or
no,
Triathlete
Yep,
magazine.
Not 220.
Then and also there's an interview on Try 24/7 with Ruth Astle, who was on the team of athletes that put this together, which is also quite interesting from her perspective and why they did it, and the details around how they did it, which is also worth a read. So I'd suggest people go to those three places, read all three articles, and come to a conclusion as to whether you're happy or not with this. And if you're not happy, do what you always do and go on the internet and shout about it.
There's the last thing. It's just on that triathlete article. There's a really good graphic that, I mean, I don't know if you can see that, James, or people playing on the screen.
You've been frozen for the last 20 minutes, mate. You haven't moved for some time.
So don't worry. Same for me with you. But it says, so let's in this race, the first position is 3:44.40. It's the same scenario as before. So the full tier race bonus is 100 because it's a diamond tier race. The strength of field score is 91, and their race time score equals 131.86. So you then got 0.4 times 100. Plus 0.3 times 91 plus 0.3 times 131.186 equals a score of 106.86. Now, again, lots of numbers, guys. I understand that it's not necessarily the easiest thing to break down, but I think that when you actually look at it in that way, it's a lot more transparent, at least, than what happened in the past, because there are some things, at least. You'll go into a race having a pretty good idea of the ballpark, and then those other numbers that sort of come out after the event. Because I agree, I think go have a look. I saw a meme this week, and it was somebody saying, it was something like, can the PTO, like, how many times they have to change their rankings, or it was something like this. And I'm thinking, fucking hell, for the last 2 years, we've had people screaming at the internet about, including ourselves, about they need to change this ranking system. And now they've made the changes, and people are giving them a hard time for changing their ranking system. It's like, you fucking can't you can't make everybody happy, can you? In fact, it seems like you can't seem to make anybody happy. But I think this is a good step. I really like this.
I do as well. I mean, I don't understand that, how many times they need to change it. When something needs changing and an organization puts an effort into changing it for the better, that is not a criticizable move. That is the criticism would be, why won't the PTO need to change things but never fucking do? That would be the meme. But they are, and they're trying to make it better. So I'm here for it.
Now, here's the next thing I'd like to, I guess, ask you, if have you seen how, because they've now retroactively changed.
Yeah,
they've retroactively changed the rankings now. Have you seen how this has changed things?
I heard a few things. I know that Anne Haug fucked off backwards down the rankings, didn't she?
She's gone to 6th.
Yeah.
Ashley Gentle is now the number 1 female triathlete in the world based on these new, and her score is 95.1. So, because I saw, I think in the article or press release, or I think Sam might have said this, that, or somebody said this, where they don't, like, with this new system, it hasn't really changed things that much. And if you look at the men's rankings, it's pretty similar. But you look at the women's race, and there's a lot of, like, first place Ashley Gentle, second place Lucy Charles Barkley, third place Paula Finlay, fourth place Danielle Arif, fifth place Taylor Knibb. It's fascinating. Again, I think, like anything, we're going to see a sort of time where it takes a little while to change things. But yeah, I I think it's a positive step, and it's a good step forward. So well
I'm
done,
look,
PTO, for listening and trying to make things better.
Agreed, and I'm looking forward to a few years' time because the ranking system's still fairly new to us all. We're still seeing similar names floating around in the ranking system. I'm looking forward to 10 years' time, and you can look back and think, oh, I remember when they were in the top 10 or when they were number one for a period. It's a good thing to have in the sport over a period of time, and I'm looking forward to that period of time playing out. I'm not wishing 10 years away. I don't want to be in my late 40s, but it's a good record to be keeping as a pro sport.
Mm. Well, mate, we've done well. There's plenty of stuff to get through again. Sorry that it was quite a male triathlon focused episode this week. I'm sure we have plenty of things to discuss about women's racing in the coming weeks. James Bell, if people want to find out other things about MX Endurance, where do they need to go?
I just want to give a quick shout out to Sam Holness, mate, who got a Guinness World Record for being the first openly autistic athlete to compete the Ironman World Championships. I thought that was pretty cool. He completed the race.
That is cool.
Completed the races in 13:05:44, and he placed 1,558th out of the 2,589 participants. And I thought that was worth a shout out because good work, mate.
Well, it also sort of links to what we were discussing last week, where there's now a specific category for athletes who are suffering an intellectual disability, as opposed to them all just being lumped in the one sort of category or just competing in mass age group. So again, I love hearing stories like that because it just gives another opportunity for athletes like that to shine. And again, amazing.
Yeah, bang on. Thanks for listening. If you want to find out more about MX Endurance, head to mxendurance.com or search MX Endurance on Facebook or at MX Endurance on Twitter or Instagram. If you want to follow me, I'm at bale.james85 on Instagram, or you can follow Tim at T414 on Instagram. Jump onto iTunes, give the show a review, do it in the podcast app. It's really useful and really easy. And we could do some good reviews at the moment. If you like what we're doing, tell a friend, help us grow. If you've got any suggestions, guests, criticisms, or comments, then DM Tim on Instagram. He loves it.
He does. Jimbo, pleasure as always, mate. Thank you for, again, this took a little bit longer than it normally would, but we got it done. Chat to you later.
Always a pleasure. Cheerio.